Welcome to Crop Families. And let me share my screen. When you go to Canvas modules and find Crop Families in this week's content, there is a Microsoft Word file. Underneath this, I will post this video once I am done. It is a very short file, just this list of 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 families out of the many families that are in plants. I've narrowed it down for you to learn to 10. And so you should know the name of the family. You should know the common name of the family, uh, which is the plant that represents the typical member or the type member of the family, and some examples. So let's go through these very briefly. You definitely want to know these 10 for the midterm. Solanaceae, otherwise known as the nightshade family. And nightshade is a plant that grows around here in California, Central Coast area, and lots of places around the world. And actually, they knew lots about the nightshade family in Europe when the plant taxonomy was being developed and plants were being identified, and explorers were going around the world and bringing back interesting plants like tomatoes from South America. And when Europeans first saw tomatoes, they quickly identified it as a member of the nightshade family, which is often known as the deadly nightshade family. Why the deadly nightshade family? You can probably guess. Many of the members are poisonous. And a lot of the nightshade around here has small whitish or possibly purplish berries, depending on the nightshade. And the flowers look almost identical to tomato flowers, but the color can vary. They can be white or pink or almost a bluish, um, depending on the species you're talking about. And they're deadly, very deadly. And so people were suspicious. They thought tomato must be deadly because it contains a toxin that is, I believe it's a neurotoxin, but it will kill you. And it turns out that tomatoes were not poisonous. And so then they started to accept them. The Europeans used tomatoes as an ornamental. And then after it was used as an ornamental, because these beautiful red fruits, they started to think maybe it has other qualities. And so it was an aphrodisiac for a while before it was accepted as a normal food. So woo woo woo, have your little bite of tomato before going out on a date. Now we know tomatoes are not only not poisonous, they're quite healthy. Although the tomato and pepper and potato, you don't want to eat the leaves. You don't include them in a salad because the leaves and stems and roots do contain small amounts of the toxic material that can be, um, I've never heard of anybody dying from it, but it can certainly make you sick and maybe vomit or something. Um, but the fruits, perfectly healthy. What do you need to know about the nightshade family? Not only how to spell Solanaceae, but you need to know the members as well. Tomato, pepper, eggplant. And I would never ask you to name all of these things, but my questions might be, tomato and pepper are members of the blank family, and you have to be able to pick out Solanaceae from a list or write Solanaceae in a blank spot or type it into a blank spot. Or I might say, name a member of the nightshade family, something like that. So I'm not going to ask you to list the entire thing. The next one, the Brassicaceae. Lots and lots and lots of history in the Brassicaceae family. The old name before it was renamed was Cruciferae, but you'll notice it's Cruciferae, not ACA, and all of the non-ACA ending families were replaced, I believe, in the later part of the 1980s. I'd have to look that up for sure, but there was a movement that took years to finally resolve, and everybody agreed, let's make them all ACA. So crucifery is still around, and a lot of the old timers still talk about the crucifers. And if you hear about the crucifers, even in common language, in certain ag circles, crucifers is a commonly used term for family Brassicaceae. What is the common name? The mustard family, because mustard, which also grows wild around here in large numbers, looks similar to the wild radish. The wild radish is also a Brassicaceae. And the wild mustard has yellow flowers. The wild radish has white or light pink flowers, or sometimes it's white with a little blush of pink. Look them up if you want. Look up wild California mustard, wild California radish, and I'm sure you've seen them. If you paid attention in your life, you're old enough that you should have seen lots and lots of mustard and radish and just didn't know what you were looking at, perhaps. Another term, not exactly where the term comes from, but the coal crops. And the coal crops is definitely an old-timer ag term. It's not a common name that is used outside of agricultural, or especially in the produce trade. So you go back to the old-time produce and marketing and trade, the coal crops were all about import, export, marketing, sales of these crops, or even the production of these crops. So what are these crops? Cabbage, broccoli, cauliflower, and radish. There are lots of others as well. Brussels sprouts are another good example that grow around here. Broccoli rabe. And I'm not even going to go through all of them. Oh, what's it called? Romanesco. I know I'd think of it if I just cleared my brain for a second. Romanesco. Look that up. Romanesco. It is amazing. It looks like some genetically modified high-tech mutant plant. It is so geometrically interesting, but it's natural. Plants are highly geometrically organized, and sometimes they don't express it the way that you would think in such a rigid geometric way, but Romanesco is amazing just to look at. You might also think about some of the colors of cauliflower. There's purple cauliflower and yellow and orange and white. And some people think those are somehow treated or GMOs, genetically modified organisms. They're not. They're just bred. They're natural plant pigments that occur in the family Brassicaceae. And some people have bred out the color for a nice white cauliflower, and some people have bred in the color for something a little more interesting. Certainly it can be very attractive. Brassicaceae. The next one, family Poaceae, old name Gramineae. And Gramineae is the true grasses that was not having the correct ending, so they changed it to Poaceae. Now, there are other kinds of relatives of the grasses that aren't true grasses, and I'm not going to bother with that, but there are several agriculturally important members of Poaceae. And this true grasses family includes sweet corn, bamboo shoots, Chinese water chestnuts, and things like barley, rice, wheat, the grain crops. Those are true grasses. And so there's a ton of things here that's important in agriculture. I would say Poaceae is most of agriculture in the world. Certainly if you take the main grains, barley, rice, wheat, oats, not safflower. It slipped my mind. Rye. Plus the corn. That's a huge, huge percentage of global agriculture right here in this family. Now, bamboo, huge. Stuff can get to be as big around as my thigh. I've seen huge bamboo trees, and they grow really fast. It's a grass. It's a true grass. Cucurbitaceae, the cucurbit family, also known as the gourd family. And a lot of people don't realize that the cucumbers, the gourds or cucurbit type family, the cucumber, also includes primary melons. When we think of melons, we think usually of things like um, watermelon and cantaloupe melon, which isn't on the list, but some people just say melon and they mean cantaloupe, the orange melon. But squashes, pumpkins, muskmelons, and gourds are all part of this. Very important in the fall because they're long summer crops. They need hot weather, and so we get these things primarily in the fall. Next, we have the Asteraceae family. I mentioned those in another lecture, but the Asteraceae, aster is star in Latin. It used to be called the Compositae family because of the composite flowers. If you look at them from a biologist point of view, a single sunflower disc or a single safflower disc or a single artichoke lettuce disc is actually multiple flowers from 5 to 100, depending on the type of plant. And they're multiple flowers all in the same disc, all in the same structure. And so the sunflower family or composites include lettuce, sunflower, the globe artichokes, the artichokes that we grow in huge amounts right on the coast here, and the Jerusalem artichoke. If you haven't heard of Jerusalem artichoke, check it out. I love Jerusalem artichoke. It looks kind of like ginger root, but ginger root is very potent, and you use it as a spice or possibly thin slices when you eat with a little bit of sushi. Clear your palate um, between bites of wasabi or something. But the Jerusalem artichoke is more like jicama, and I use it like jicama. You get it and you clean it really carefully. Leave the, if it's in good shape and it's a quality Jerusalem artichoke root, because it's the root you're eating, leave the brown stuff on the outside. Doesn't matter. Grate it in kind of a fine shredded, fluffy material and add it to your salad. It's not the same taste as jicama, but it is similar in its texture, its moisture, and it's a really nice thing to try. Family Fabaceae. Now, almost everybody knows the name legumes, the legumes rather, leguminosae. The old name didn't have ACA, so it's now Fabaceae, but the name legume is not going to go away. It is so thoroughly intertwined into our language of agriculture. We talk about crop rotation with legumes. We don't say with Fabaceae, we say legumes because the legumes are a group of plants in the bean and pea family. Now I put pea family here, but bean and pea family, it's often called in other texts, because beans and peas are common agricultural legumes. And there are other legumes that we use in crop rotation that aren't a food source, things like vetch and clover, which are very commonly used. But sometimes it's peas that are used in cover crops between crop rotation. And why are the leguminosae or Fabaceae so important? Not only are they a good food source, but they have a relationship with special nitrogen fixing bacteria in their roots. And these nitrogen fixing bacteria live in the roots of these legumes, and the legume provides support, a home, a little bit of food, and the bacteria supply additional nitrogen because they are one of the few things that can take nitrogen gas out of the atmosphere and convert it in a very high energy reaction and convert it to a soluble form in the soil. Once it's in a soluble form in the soil, plants can use it. Animals living in the soil can use it. It is now available nitrogen for biological use, but it is only bacteria that have this ability. Uh, there is certainly some nitrogen fixation that occurs with other processes, primarily lightning. We don't get a lot of lightning around here, but when we look at a global standpoint, there is a lightning storm on Earth going on all the time. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year for millions of years. There's always a lightning storm going on somewhere. So when you look at the nitrogen fixation globally, lightning is something that's important globally for nitrogen cycling, nitrogen production. It builds up. Lightning has changed the face of the earth because of its nitrogen fixation. But it's minor, and it certainly isn't going to feed your crops in Salinas. Um, the other way is using high energy through our own use. Primarily, it is a byproduct or a side product from the petroleum industry. So while a company like Shell Oil or Chevron Oil is busy taking raw crude oil out of the ground, taking it to a plant, and then turning that into gasoline and natural gas and diesel oil and all these other petroleum based products, there's a lot of heat generated in that. They don't want the heat to go to waste, so they use that heat to make other things. And one of the most affordable, most profitable, most efficient things to make as a side business while you're making oil products is making nitrogen based fertilizers. So you can make nitrate and you can make ammonium and you can make these nitrogen components that will go into conventional fertilizers. You can't use those in organic production, but for conventional fertilizers are really a byproduct of the oil industry, the oil and gas industry. So a little bit of a side diversion there, but we're talking about these legumes producing nitrogen. And so that was just a little side shoot on other ways to produce nitrogen. The next family, we have Chenopodiaceae. The CH at the beginning is like a K sound. Chenopodiaceae, called the goosefoot family. Goosefoot lives here in the mountains. I've actually made a goosefoot pie before, a goosefoot berry pie. They're little berries. They're hard to come by because they grow wild, and usually if they're sweet enough to be something you would want to eat or put in a pie, the birds have all gotten the good ones. So it's a rare find, but I did once find wild gooseberry in the Santa Cruz Mountains and found enough berries to make a pie. It was a very small pie, but I made it. But the primary things that we look at in agriculture from the goosefoot family is not the gooseberries. It's table beets, sugar beets as well. Sugar beets that were grown for many, many years here in the valley to supply the Spreckels sugar plant, which gave the town of Spreckels its name, just south of Salinas. The ground is way too expensive to grow sugar beets here, so sugar production has moved elsewhere. But there's still some sugar beet research in the area. But table beets, sugar beets, and spinach. Spinach is the only one that really is a big deal here in the Salinas Valley anymore. Alliaceae, the onion family. Alliaceae includes onion and garlic. And we don't grow a whole lot of that right here in the Salinas Valley, but you don't have to go very far. You go to Gilroy, the garlic capital of the world, and China might want to take that, but I guarantee you Gilroy garlic is way better than Chinese garlic. And that's not just somebody from California trying to pump up the California, yeah, we're great. No, there really is a difference. Chinese garlic is larger and it just doesn't have nearly as strong of a flavor. And it's a lot cheaper to grow. Pound for pound, Chinese garlic is used because it's so much cheaper, not only to produce on Chinese soil, but it gives you more pounds per acre. The garlic that we grow here is a much more intense, more flavorful, higher quality garlic. And again, some things doesn't matter where you grow it or what you do with it, but the varieties we do here are much, much, much better. The next one, Apiaceae, used to be called umbelliferae, and umbelliferae comes from the structure of the flower clusters. Umbels are a really neat looking flower cluster, and I'll just give you a interesting little view of an umbel. And go to images, there's some on the right there, but here's an umbel where you have flowers on these short stalks, and these short stalks all join to one point. And this is a compound umbel that I'm moving my mouse on, the picture in the lower left corner. You can see there's all of the individual flowers join at one point, and then the subclusters join at a secondary point. So this is a compound umbel, and some umbels are simple umbels like you see in the lower right. And carrots are an example of a flowering plant that makes umbels. And so is parsnip and celery. So we grow a lot of celery here. And I would say that's the most important one here. But in California, we do tons of carrots as well. Carrot production in California is a pretty big deal. Parsnips, I'm not sure how big that is. We do grow parsnips in California, but maybe you don't even know what the heck a parsnip is. It's kind of a specialty crop. And then the last one, we'll wrap it up with Asparagaceae. And I've made a point of this class. If I ask a question on a test, which important agricultural crop in the Salinas Valley is a member of the Asparagaceae family? If I ask that question and you get it wrong, you automatically get an F in the class. If you don't know that asparagus is from Asparagaceae, something is wrong. And there's something else there you might recognize. Anybody have any experience with agave? Another important member of that family. So that's it for crop families.